Well, hey, welcome to week 6 of Weapons of Self-Destruction. How are we doing today? We good? Ready? Last week we talked about temptation, and that was tough, right? It was like, oh man, he needs to hurry up and get done with this message. But it was helpful, wasn't it? It was helpful for all of us because all of us deal with that. And today, if you didn't like last week, you're really going to hate today. Today we're talking about greed. Can we say greed on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3. All right, whenever I talk about greed or giving or money, half the people come, all right? And you guys are the crazy, faithful half of our church, or someone invited you and this is your first time, you're like, oh no, you didn't, right? Or you invited someone for the first time, you're like, man, I should have read the back of that card. The first time I made an invite, they come when dude's talking about greed, all right? But here's the thing, we're going to have fun with this, all right? It will be confrontation a little bit because all of us deal with it. But it'll be fun, and I believe even more importantly than that, it's going to be super helpful for us as we try to defeat and deal with this weapon called greed. So the last 3 weeks, working on today, I've been thinking about it a ton, studying, researching, praying. And then I decided to go to Google, and I Googled the top 10 songs that have to deal with money, greed, or possessions. And I thought it'd be fun for us to begin our service today on an uncomfortable topic with a kind of a fun game. All right, so let's name that tune. When you recognize the song, I want you to slip your hand up, and it's a safe place, all right? Judgment-free zone. Slip your hand up if you recognize the song. And the first song, we're going to throw it way back to the mid-'60s. DJ, if you could roll it. All right, that's pretty good. Anyone? I Can't Get No by the Rolling Stones. Yeah, I think 1965. Is that correct, Doug? 1965, I think that song was recorded. I Can't Get No Satisfaction. All right, that was kind of a layup. This is going to be a little bit more difficult, and you have never heard this next song in a church before. Let's go ahead and roll this one. All right, that's good. All right, yeah, we can't go very far into that one. All right, you're like, oh, it stopped. So anyone know the name of that song? Like some of you don't want to admit, I've never heard of this music before in my life. All right, this third one, go ahead and roll this third one. All right, we got half, yeah. All right, this third one, anyone know who's responsible for that song? Yeah, and the song is Mo Money, Mo Problems. You're like, yeah, that like all of a sudden your life is now clear. Mo Money, Mo Problems. This last song, for those of you that were here on time, you heard our band cover it, but this last song is a layup. We will all recognize this last song. DJ, go ahead and roll the last song. All right, anyone? Who wrote this song? The Beatles. Can't Buy Me Love Yet. We try to do it every single day. You do it, I do it. We try to buy love. Since the day you opened your eyes, you've been searching for love. You've been yearning for love. Like it was built in, hardwired in. We want love. We want belonging. We want to know that we're okay. And if we're not okay, we seek this kind of love. And the reality is some of you are kind of lining up with the Stones today. You're saying, yeah, I can't get no satisfaction. I'm trying to buy it. I'm trying to mortgage it. I can't get it. Right? And some of you say, John, I married a gold digger, right? And some of you are saying, here, it's true, right? I've had more money than ever before in my life, more money, and I also have say it with me, problems. And some of you are saying, man, yeah, I've been trying to buy love. I've been trying to buy love, and it's just not working. So, let's just all together, can we all agree, maybe a new strategy needs to be taken. Maybe something different needs to be embraced in our lives. Thankfully, Jesus spoke about this all the time. If you have a Bible, let's dive into the first book in the New Testament, the book of Matthew, chapter 16. Chapter 16. If you need a Bible, you can raise your hand. Our team will bring you one. And that would be page 687. If our team hands you a Bible, all right? If you need a Bible, raise your hand. We'll bring you one. You can take that Bible home, please. It's our gift to you. Begin to read it. It is the NIV translation. We've said this before, but what that means is it actually makes sense, all right? You know what it says, all right? Matthew 16, we're going to look there in verse 24 of Matthew 16. Then Jesus said to his disciples, so who's about to do the talking? Jesus, right? Generally in church, anyone asks you a question, just say Jesus. 50% of the time, you'll be right, all right? Jesus said to his disciples, here he goes. Jesus steps up to the mic, and he says something that really offended them and is going to really offend us today. Whoever wants to be my fans. No, I didn't say that. So whoever wants to be my disciples, right? Whoever wants to be my disciples must, not maybe, it's a must. This next phrase, deny themselves. Deny themselves, all right? And not everyone wants to be his disciple, right? A number of people in the room, you're like, I'm not ready for that yet, and that's okay. But those of us that are saying, you know what, we want to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, he says, all right, then, you must deny yourself, right? They must deny themselves. If you cross-reference this in the Gospel of Luke, there's a word added right after this, and that word is daily. You're like, oh, really? Yeah, daily. Just like temptation, it's not a one-and-done thing, right? There's not like a big right hook you swing, and he's out for like ever. But here's what I found in my life with Mr. Greed. I turned back around, and he's right there on the throne of my life. This is a daily fight. We deny ourselves daily, and it says this, he says, take up their cross and follow me. You know, when Jesus said this had so much relevant weight to it. In Jesus' lifetime alone, scholars believe that they saw close to 30,000 crucifixions. I mean, they knew firsthand what it looked like for someone to embrace their cross. And Jesus is saying, listen, there's a cross with your name on it. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. Whoever wants to lose their life for me will find it. What good is it to be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? Here's the big idea today. This whole message for the next 30 minutes, we're going to hang it on this one statement. Here it is. We defeat greed by denying self. We defeat greed by denying self. We defeat greed by denying self. I want us to say that together so it gets lodged into our minds. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. We defeat we defeat greed by denying self. And like I said, this isn't a one and done thing. This isn't just like at camp that one year as a 6-year-old student. Man, it was amazing. And like I defeated it then. No, greed, you knock it out one day, you turn around, and there he is again on the throne of your life. We defeat greed by denying ourselves, not once, but we deny ourselves on a daily basis. I would go as far to say this. The more you understand what it means to be Christian, like a little Jesus is what that really means. It means that in the very center of our life is self-denial, right? It means that like we've come to this place where we realize that it is not about us anymore. We defeat greed by denying self. And I want to spend the rest of our time on 2 ways specifically that we can defeat greed by denying ourselves. And the first is this, sacrificial giving. Sacrificial giving, and this is what you're anticipating me to talk about, so let's just talk about it. Let's have a chat, all right? Sacrificial giving. And some of you right now, you're like, yes, because, right? Like there's 4 of us that say yes, because we actually love to give. We do. We have a spiritual gift of giving. We love it. It is the most favorite thing in our life. Kelly would tell you, that's me. I love it. Before I was a pastor, that was me. Like, I love to give. I do. I love it, right? And probably the vast majority of us in the room are like, oh, I wish you wouldn't bring that up, right? Maybe it's because the church you grew up in, there was a scandal of some kind. Or maybe it's because of the news stories that you've read. You just can't trust anyone, let alone like a pastor, right? And so whenever there is conversation about giving, immediately you go like this. But here's what I'm asking. For just 20 minutes, will you just kind of let it down? And we just lean in just a little bit. I mean, would you consider the fact that Jesus talked about this all the time? I mean, I don't talk about it all the time. In fact, I probably should talk about it more. If you went to the church that Jesus led, right, and he was the pastor that spoke all the time, Jesus would have preached on giving once a month. 25% of the time of his teaching was about money and possession. A friend of mine says it this way, is Jesus obsessed with money? The answer is no. He just knew that we would be, right? He knew that our possessions would have this knack for possessing us. Jesus knew that our stuff would not just be stuff, but that our stuff would control us, and we'd look to our stuff as these kind of forms of God themselves, and we'd worship the stuff that is ours, right? Jesus talked about it over and over again. Why? Because he made us and he knows us, and he knows what will set us free. And what will set you free and me free is not more stuff. It's self-denial. We defeat greed by denying self. And one of the most practical ways we can do that is through sacrificial giving. Our staff is going through a book right now, and in this book that we're going through, it talks about the power of habits and some really fresh things on it I never knew before. It's talking about keystone habits, and it said actually half of our decisions every day are decisions that are made on autopilot. I don't know if you knew this. I never knew it. But it's because of the habits we have in our life. Half of our decisions we don't even think about. And they're decisions we make that are either passively or they've been intentional habits that we've created. And so from this place, I'd love for us to look at this sacrificial giving today through this lens of a keystone habit. And here's the definition of a keystone habit. This was new for me a few weeks back. Keystone habits lead to the development of multiple good habits. They start a chain effect in your life that produces a number of positive outcomes. Giving is one of these. Sacrificial giving is a keystone habit. It's a habit that we put in our life that yields many other amazing habits. 10 years ago, I was just starting out as a pastor. I was working at a little startup small church called Willow Creek Community Church. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. You need to pray for them these days. They're really struggling. But that's where I was at, an amazing church, and I'm so grateful every day for the ministry opportunity I had there. And I was 26, and I was starting out, and I'll never forget, for a weekend service, they had in this guy by the name of Stanley. I read everything he's written. I listen to pretty much every sermon he's ever given. This guy's amazing, right? He's had a huge impact in my life. And so when I was 26, I got to hear him speak for the first time. And he came into Willow, and his subject matter on the day was that of giving, right? And this is what a lot of pastors do. We will bring in other people to speak on giving, right? One, because it's not that fun to speak on. And secondly, you just kind of hear better from someone else that we bring in, all right? So next time, I'm going to bring someone else in. But that day, here's Stanley. And he gave a message that I've never forgotten. He talked about what it looks like to be a sacrificial giver. And he went through this demonstration that stuck with me, and I want to do kind of that same demonstration here for the next couple minutes, all right? It's really high tech. You need to be like really good with numbers to figure this out, because the question is sacrificial giving. Well, John, what does that look like? I'm going to tell you what that looks like. Well, at least what he said, all right? So if you really hate what I'm about to say, you can just email Andy Stanley and tell him, all right? So the first thing he said, all right, if you have $1, right? If you've earned $1, do you know what you do with the first 10 cents of that dollar? Anyone? Yeah, give it. Give it right back to God. And for many right now, this is a leap. You're like, but I earned it, and I understand where you're coming from. The more you become a follower of Jesus, the more we understand that, wow, he's the one that actually has given me everything. He really did. He allowed me to grow up in the school I grew up in the family I grew up in, the neighborhood I grew up in. He actually connected me with the network that I have, and I'm nowhere without my network. I mean, really everything. Yeah, and it's taken effort on your part, no doubt. You trace it all the way back. Isn't it God that gave us everything in the first place? So he said, we give the first 10% back to our local church. And you're like, and that's where I'm out. That's what some of you are thinking. All right, let's talk about that for a second. If you can't give to this church, for a myriad of reasons, because I am preaching in Nikes right now and that really bothers you and I need to dress up more, or because Tommy's jeans they're too tight, all right? For a myriad of reasons. The leadership's just too young, you know? Or we've spent too much money on our facility. That was a joke. I'm not sure what it is. I would actually help you go to another church and help you give there. I would. Why? Because of what it does to our heart. You cannot do this first jar right here without faith. Can't do it. This will force you to trust God. This will force you to start praying. So he just said, you just take the first 10 cents. This is so easy, by the way, with $1. It gets a little harder the more you make. The first 10 is like, yeah, it's not mine. I didn't do it anyway. That's the Lord's, all right? First 10%. Second 10, this gets a little more fun. You're going to love this part. Get to save that. Yeah, it's actually wise to save. Yeah, and you can't start here, but we're here now, all right? It's been awesome the last couple of years. We're now there. All right, we're able to save for my retirement fund so I can golf every day in Florida. And I'm not retiring for 6 years, so we're saving a lot right now. No, I'm kidding. So the first 10, all right, we give. Second 10, we save. Now, here's the deal. Before this next part is really something. I spent time this morning trying to find jars just this size in our house. And I intentionally found the biggest jar for this last part. So I'm expecting some applause because this is really good news. The 80 left over, the 80 cents. Guess where that goes? Huh? You get to live on that. That's for you. Yes! Right? You're like, get out of here. I'm serious. Limited time only. No, I'm serious. You get to live off the rest. Off 80. You're like, I get the big jar? Yeah, you get the big jar. Here's what's unbelievable. This practice right here, right? It builds these protective measures in our life. We go through our month, those of us that live by this, we go through this with great freedom. We love investing, as Hillary said, we love investing in this place that's brought life to us spiritually. That's brought community in our life, the way that God has worked in this place. We're saying, God, here it is, verse 10, use it, multiply it to advance your kingdom in the 10 and beyond. The next 10, we say, God, this is for us. This is for down the road. We're saving for rainy days. Something might happen, emergency fund. And then we're saying, God, we're going to trust you to be able to live off the rest. God, we are going to change things. We're going to choose not to buy certain things. And I'm not a shopper, I'm a buyer, all right? I love to buy stuff. And we're just saying, God, we're going to have to make it work within the rest. I'll never forget when Andy Stanley went through that. I've never forgotten that, and I'm telling you guys, this is how we live, and this brings freedom. Your possessions aren't possessing you any longer. 2 weeks ago, I was on a flight coming back from Africa. I was in Africa with 15 others from our church because we've been raising a ton of money for clean water in Bulisa, Uganda. It's been amazing. A bunch of us, like over 100 of us, have run the marathon, like 26.2 miles, and some half marathons. We've raised over $100,000 for clean water in a place most of you will never go, over 60 child sponsorships every month, all right? And I got to go in part to do due diligence. I wanted to see the work. I wanted to make sure what we're investing in is legit. Also, I wanted God to change my heart. And so we went there, and I'm telling you guys, I've traveled a ton on mission trips. I've never seen poverty at this level ever in my life, ever. I've never been more remote, and I'm an adventure guy, ever in my life. And I've also have never seen satisfaction in people like I had seen ever in my life. It was a powerful experience. And we get back on the plane, and the journey back home is very long. It's actually 2 flights. The first flight is 8 hours. The second flight is 8 hours or more. And I got on the flight, and it was 12:30 at night. I was tired. It had been a whole day of traveling from the village just to the airport. And some of you that have flown before, there's something that you're thinking about before you get on the plane, and it's actually not even the safety of the aircraft at all, but it's something called say it with me, leg room, yes. And I brought a picture to describe what I felt like on my flight home from Africa. Now, that isn't me. That's an actor. But that's how I felt. All right, I was squeezed in. I'm like, oh no, it's 12:30 at night. I'm absolutely exhausted, but there are people just all over me. How many of you just get like the willies when there's just people all up in your space, right? And some of you, that's why we have extra chairs here, like so no one sits by you. You're like, get away from me, right? So like, yeah, this is how I was feeling. It was a terrible feeling, all right? And the flight attendant came on the loudspeaker, and she said, ladies and gentlemen, we actually have one remaining seat in first class for whoever hits their little buzzer first. Now, please note that this will cost you 1,000 American dollars. Instantly, the buzzer went off, right? I was like, holy cow. Man, I looked around, it was Russ Franciscina. He gets up and goes for it. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't Russ. But someone's like, absolutely, because this isn't going to work. You know what I need? I need some leg room. And so I brought a picture of what it looks like on first class. This is what my research tells me, right? And that smile's real. That's not faking it. Like, no doubt that's how happy you must be in first class. They're all spread out. Like, this is amazing. Bring the wine, bring the cookies, and the cheese, right? I'm in first class, and this is costing me $1,000 for an 8-hour flight. But here's why I bring this up. This deal right here, you know what it feels like? It feels like that. Not like the cookies part. Not like all of a sudden I have this life of comfort and ease. Not that. But space. Room. It's like taking a deep breath. And as Americans, we're actually really bad at breathing. Little fun fact there. We don't breathe that much. Just taking like a really deep breath. Space. Like when we go after greed the way Jesus would have us, this practical tool creates some like financial legroom in our life. It creates space. You would be amazed at what this does for your relationships, right? It creates that deep exhale. Now here's what I want us to know online. If you go online, wearemission.com/give, we have tools there to continue the conversation. More things that you can read on, all right? We recommend different books that you can read. For many, you're like, you didn't grow up this way. I grew up this way. You didn't, all right? This is like a huge deal. So read, research, all right? Also online at wearemission.com/give, that's where you can begin giving online. And the reason I emphasize that is for this reason. When we give online, it's automatic faithfulness. Automatic faithfulness. If you tally up all the adults in our church, there's about 800 people that are coming now. All the adults in our church, 50% give, at least some portion, okay? You might think that's high or low. I'm not sure what you think on that. It's pretty decent, all right? We can grow in that. But of the 50%, here's the point I want to get to. Of the 50% that give, 70% of us give online, which is actually really good, all right? It's automatic faithfulness. I was old school. I remember when we started the church, I'm like, no chance, John Frank, I'm not giving online. I'm old school. I write my checks, all right, in black ink, and we're going to give it as a family. And then many weeks, I just forgot, and I'm the pastor of the church, right? I was forgetting. Give online, automatic faithfulness. The first 10 goes to God. The second 10 goes to savings. We live off the rest. Give, save, live. We defeat greed by denying self. Sacrificial giving is the first thing that I want us to talk about. The second thing I want us to talk about is probably not what you were expecting me to talk about. The second part is sacrificial living. Sacrificial living. And you're thinking right now, but hold on, isn't greed mainly financial? And I would say, I thought it was. But what God has been teaching me the last few weeks is that it's actually more holistic than that. It's outworking a lot of times is financial, but the reality is greed is not really a financial thing, it's a heart thing. It's actually a heart thing. And over the last few weeks, my eyes have been opened. When I was preparing for this subject matter, I was actually excited to teach it because when it comes to financial giving, this is my favorite thing to do. So I'm like, I'm good. I don't got to like be convicted and all this stuff. This is great, all right? Everyone else can feel bad, but I'm going to feel great, all right? That's kind of how I was thinking. And then I started to do some more work on it. And I began to realize that actually there's more going on than just the financial side of it. Sacrificial living. Andy Stanley says it like this in his book, Enemies of the Heart, which is a great resource to continue this conversation. He says, guilt says, I owe you. Anger says, you owe me. Greed says, I owe me. So here's kind of what it looks like. Greed is us writing IOUs to ourselves like every day, right? And if you're not careful, here's what happens. Those of us that are wrestling, not with financial greed, it's relational greed. That's really what's going on, right? This resentment has bloomed up into greed, whether we realize it or not. Oftentimes, it's fertilized by comparison. Have you noticed that? Right? I mean, something happened, someone hurt you or did something, and all of a sudden, right, that resentment blooms up, and there's greed, but it's fertilized by comparison. Keeping up with the Joneses. I mean, who are the Joneses anyway? How do we know that they're actually fulfilled? Has anyone ever asked that? Right? So comparison, it actually is like fertilizer on greed. You know what pride is? Pride is a fence we build around it so no one can get in there. That's how these weapons kind of work together. And shame says, man, I'm not even going to go near discussing that. Sacrificial living. God has convicted me on relational greed. And for some of you that know me, you're like, that makes no sense. John, you're a people guy. Like, you're with people all the time, and that's true. John, you love your neighbors, and you hang out with them, and you do fire pits, and that's true as well. But God has been showing me that it's easy for me to be free relationally, except when I get home. When I get home. So here's what I want to talk about just for a minute. The last 3 weeks have been awesome in this fact. That God has been teaching me about the neighbor that's never moving away, I hope, which is my wife. I mean, have you thought about the words of Jesus, love God with everything you got and love your neighbor as yourself? And that's real good news for most of your neighbors, right? You love yourself, right? Have you ever considered the most important neighbor you'll ever love is your spouse? And I'm being as real as I can in this moment. Like that for me has been hard. And we have a great relationship. We have an amazing marriage, right? Not painting myself as a terrible husband here, but many days I walk through the door when I get home, all right? And sidebar, I work more than just on Sundays, all right? I walk through the door, and my first thought, and I don't know where this comes from, I don't know when it started. My first thought is, you know what? It's John time. Oh, yeah. It's John time. Oh, it is John time, baby. It's about old JP right now. Woo! It is about John. And then I get in there, and I have small kids. And I'm sure if you've been around them before. Like small kids, right? They need stuff all the time. They get hurt all the time, right? And I also have this value of loving my wife and serving her as Christ serves the church. So this is a conflict in me. I mean, I feel it. And I'm telling you guys, I've been working on this for years. And in the last 3 weeks, I've had more freedom in this and victory than ever before in my life. Why? Because I started calling it greed. I did. It's the only thing I can think of. It's the only thing I can come up with. I've never met a person yet that said, you know what, I'm greedy. I'm totally greedy. Met a lot of people that will say, yeah, I struggle with comparison. Totally, man. Glad you taught on it. Never really thought about it like that. Or, you know what, resentment. Yeah, come from a crazy family, and I got to see them. Thanksgiving. Oh. Some of you, pride, you're like, yep, pride's my deal. Some of us, we have acknowledged shame. And even last week, within kind of the safety of a trusted community, we acknowledge temptation. I've yet to meet someone that's like, I'm just greedy. Let me just call it what it is. I'm greedy. All right? Yet to meet one. What is that? I don't quite know. I don't have the answer in this moment. They're not in the back of my Bible. I'm not quite sure what it's about. Really not. That's all I'm telling them. Like, I don't know. It seems like greed, this word has more weight. And I'm not sure why. Not sure why yet. But I'm going to keep thinking about it. You know, if you haven't figured out, you can talk to me after the service. But I'm telling you guys, there's been more victory and freedom in my marriage, in my home, in the last 3 weeks than ever before. And it's not like it's been like terrible before that. It hasn't at all. But God's been talking to me about relational greed. Relational greed. The first one, sacrificial giving, I had a keystone habit around this 10-10-80, right? Give, save, live. There's a keystone habit within sacrificial living that I want to talk about just for a second, and it's in the form of a question. Very simple, painfully practical, and this can change your home, and this can change your relationships. It's very simple. Here it is. How can I help? All right, I said that fast. Let me do it again. How can I help? Those of you here that were here like 3 years ago, I talked about it like 3 years ago. How can I help? When was the last time, guy, you got home and you're like, all right, like, wait till the kids are down or something, but babe, how can I help? Let's get it done. How can I help? What do you need? How can I help? To the wives in the house, all right? This isn't just like for the men, all right? The wives in the house. When was the last time you said to your man, hey, babe, and try to mean it, all right? And let me just give a little sidebar here. Guys, she already knows what you're probably going to say, all right? And if you aren't sure what I'm talking about, just watch last week's message, all right? So hold off the like sexual thing, all right? Because she already thinks you're going to say that, all right? Ask for something else, all right? But if she gets the courage up and she says, how can I help, right? Guys, when your wives have asked that, right? Or your key friendships have asked that, it is like, oh my, she sees me. She gets it. She knows what I'm carrying. Man, she sees the stress I'm under. And she sees the pressure I feel. She wants to help me. And when she says that or asks that question and she means it, that is transformation in our home. How can I help? I want us to practice, right? Most of us have never asked that one before, right? We're going to do that on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. How can I help? I know it was scary, right? You're like, What? What did you just say? I'm not sure. It sounded like you wanted to help. Let's try that one more time on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. How can I help? Yeah, powerful stuff. Bob's been dealing with this, and Bob has really, really gone to battle on this enemy of the heart, on this weapon of self-destruction named greed. Let's take a look at his story now.
My name is Bob. I was married and divorced, currently married now for 18 years. I have 3 kids and 2 grandkids. Greed in my life looked normal. It was almost just a part of my daily life as far as business, my family, my friends, all my relationships. Greed was always there, I just didn't know it. And what it did, it hardened my heart, and it hampered a lot of relationships with my family, my children, my youngest son, my wife, my first wife, and it made me selfish. One of the big examples, I guess, would be of my greed, my personal greed, was I was living in Roselle with my current wife, who wasn't my wife at that time, and I was, again, trying to get the next million, trying to grab and become a millionaire, be this big-time success. And I got an opportunity to go down to Florida for this great job, and I went after the money. But in the wake, I left my ex-wife, and I left my 2 children, who at the time were probably 6 and 9, maybe 7 and 10, around that age. And I can still remember pulling away in my car and them sitting on the porch and waving goodbye to me. And at the time, I just felt, well, this is the right thing to do. I'm going to provide for my family. They'll be okay. Everything will be fine. And ultimately, it wasn't. That was greed. I just worried about myself. And I thought I was doing the right thing, but it was about me and becoming a success. And most recently, it affected my marriage to my wife currently, because I was so regimented, I was so selfish, everything had to be my way, that we started a disconnect, and it didn't matter because I was out chasing the money. And my greed of self wouldn't allow me to, I was there, I was at home, but everything had to be my way. I was so unhappy in my life, and I just didn't know why. I thought this was normal. This is how it is. You strive, you get things. I was a guy that when I had my business in Chicago, I had 14 suits. That was my big goal. Get 14 suits so that for 7 days a week, and I could have a 2-week rotation. So if people saw me, they'd be like, he never wears the same suit. And I could have anything. I could go out with any girl I wanted. I could have any relationship I wanted. Everything was easy, and I thought that was normal. And I thought that was living life, and that was happiness, but it wasn't. After God came into my life, after I talked with Jesus and I accepted Jesus, what I discovered was what matters in life is peace, joy, happiness, giving. That's where happiness comes from. When I'm feeling stressed, and I tell people this all the time, and the world's got you down and you feel the enemy at you, do something nice for somebody. Give. It frees you, and it comes back so much more because it pleases God, and he goes, that's my child, and he gives it back to you.
Let's thank Bob for sharing his story with us this morning. Yeah, what would it look like for a third keystone habit to run to Jesus? Run to Jesus. I get confused just like you do. I place my identity in the hands of things that never satisfy just like you do. I get confused. I wonder oftentimes, just like you do, right? But when I run to Jesus, as Bob talked about, man, it's just like, now he's the one that actually follows through on what he promises. Greed, every time, overpromises. It's yet to deliver. It doesn't last. You taste it for just a second, but Jesus said, come to me, those who are weary and heavy laden, and you will find rest for your soul. Today we have communion set up as we come to a close in this series. I want you to run to Jesus. I want you to go to the communion table today wherever you're at on your journey. For some of you, it's the first time you'll ever take communion really knowing what it means. The bread that represents the body of Christ. The juice that represents the blood of Christ. His love ran red for all of humanity. And for some of you, it's the first time, and today is going to be the day where you say, all right, I'm done being in the driver's seat of my life. I'm handing the keys to the one that came for my rescue. All right? And some of us, it'll be the time where we've done it yet again. We have come to the author and perfecter of our faith who longs to see us thrive in every way. Right? I mean, Jesus is the one that longs to see your marriage, your relationships in every way flourish. And they do when he's at the center. They do. And so as you come to the communion table today, you'll find the elements there, and you'll also find our holiday gift mark cards. We're doing an incredible thing for our community these days, and we're just asking people to be responsible for 10 toys. So we have a whole lot of cards left over. If you haven't done it yet, grab one of those cards. That's an on-ramp onto living a generous life. Grab a card, go to Walmart or Target, buy some toys, all right? If you've already done that, you want to do more, you can do another one. We won't be mad at you for that, all right? But I'm going to pray for us, and then Tommy and the band are going to lead us into a worship set from there. God, thank you. Thank you for giving us this living example of how you hold nothing back. If you're anything, God, you're generous. And God, you put on display for all mankind the level and the degree of your generosity of sending your Son to win us back. And God, I pray that that would form our posture and practices of giving, that the gospel would be what informs it. And God, I pray for us as we approach the communion table today, that something mysteriously powerful would happen. Bring conviction, bring healing, bring promise. God, bring light, bring whatever needs to be brought for us to grow and move more and more into your image. We love you, Lord. And we thank you for how you have called us to live a life that looks like yours, one of self-denial for the glory of God. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you for watching Mission Church Online. It's our prayer that this message both challenged and inspired you. We hope you will join us in redefining what church could be in your life by taking a next step. Whether that's sharing this message with a friend, joining us live next Sunday, or requesting prayer by emailing us at prayer@wearemission.com. We believe that these are moments that can lead to movement.